Hey YouTube, and welcome back to Beyond the Manual. We've got a couple requests lately of kind of doing a few videos about bodywork, and let me be very blunt. As I said in the overview video for this vehicle, I am a pretend welder and not a body guy. Or maybe I'm not a body guy and a pretend welder. Either which way, I'll show you the process. I go through the products I use, and you can make up your mind about whether you want to take any advice at all from me. So I'll show you what we're going to be working on here, what I'm going to be recording over the next few weeks, and we'll go from there. More body work. Yay. So what we're working on here is this replacement wing. And this is from Hawks. This is the 91 to 92 formula spoiler. I think it's the closest thing I can get to what came on a 92 GTA. I might be wrong, but this is what I got. Here's what's left of the old one, in case you ever wanted to see what was inside that old wing. Unfortunately, while I was on vacation, I had this one all prepped to paint, and it actually fell in my paint booth and shattered into like glass. Like, there's no repairing this. For those who said, oh, just no, this thing was like in 1,000 pieces. And it is pretty brittle. This is old plastic that's spent its entire life being beat by the sun. But I don't know why I kept those two. I just did. So we'll take a look at what shipped from Hawks here. Now, this one does come with, I don't know, threaded inserts in it. This is fiberglass, so much better than the plastic. I would say the fit is probably an 8 out of 10. Well, we're not going to put it back on the car now, but you can believe me. This one also uses a slightly different mounting style. It uses these L brackets, kind of see there. And if we look, the factory style here, let me go grab one of these so you can kind of get an idea. Normally on the factory windows, they had these little hooks in two spots that would grab in there, and that's, you know, what would hook to keep this wing from lifting up. So to use this Hawks one, I had to knock those off. It's unfortunate because I just had painted this rim. But that's fine. We'll touch this up with a little paintbrush. I'll mix up some primer and some paint just to make sure this doesn't rust any further to take care of that. But we had to knock those off. We got to clean this up yet. So I'm also going to show that process. It's not rocket science. And like I said, this is only if you guys are after a 10-foot car. This thing is not going to SEMA. The driver's side has dents in it. The doors are a little wavy. The only thing I really concentrated on was making sure I had a body line that I block sanded back in this car, okay? As you can see, I also have bent hinges, so maybe we take care of those in a separate video. Maybe I'll do it in this one. But to use that, we did elongate these holes. These have probably been bored out to just over 1/2 inch using a step bit. I needed that because that was not precise, so the wing wasn't sitting. The holes lined up-ish, but it wasn't sitting evenly left to right on the back of the hatch. So that gives me enough wiggle room to put that into place. We'll make sure we seal these up good. It came with some rubber washers. We'll also probably put some gasketing material on the wing around that, so when everything is set, there's kind of 2 levels of protection there. This thing's never going to see a high-pressure car wash. It'll see minimal rain. I'm not too worried about that. So if we go back and take a look at this wing, this is not a gel coat. At least mine did not come in a gel coat. This is I don't know if you can see the texture in that. But I would say this is probably some type of epoxy primer over the fiberglass resin here. So when I say texture, it's fairly light. So what I'm going to do here is, for this, let me get on the other side so you can see maybe a little bit better about what I'm talking about. You're never going to see the underside of the wing, okay? So we're only going to focus on finishing really probably the top and maybe a little bit alongside here as far as blocking goes, okay? So we are going to we're going to start with a pretty fine grit because this is, I believe, already epoxy primer, and this should be pretty flat, okay? Being fiberglass. I'm assuming the mold was good and all that. So we're going to very lightly block sand this down with some 400. That's where I'm going to start. We want to be careful if we go through to fiberglass, okay? Then we have to what am I trying to say? We have to re-primer, if you will. And maybe that's not going to be a big deal yet. I haven't quite decided whether I'm going to actually spray a fillable primer over this or not. If this block sand's smooth, I will probably just shoot this with the epoxy primer I'm using as a sealer, okay? So we will see how this block stands out. And underneath then, okay, we're just gonna scuff it. We're not too worried about what it looks like per se. No one's ever gonna see underneath the wing. And being that this, we'll make an assumption here that this epoxy primer has been on here for 6 months, right? Anytime you are dealing with epoxy primer, you do want to make sure it is scuffed before putting anything over the top of it, okay? That stuff gets hard. It needs a way to stick. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to start making an attempt to wet block sand, I guess. Is that the right word? We're going to start with wet 400 and work it on the surface, and we're going to try to see if we can get some of this texture out of here. To be brutally honest with you, I'm probably not even going to spray a guide coat yet. I just want to see if I can get this from rough to smoother, and then we'll worry about looking at it and seeing if we want to block sand it. So again, all depends what kind of car you want. You want a SEMA car? Yeah, you're going to probably take the time to block sand this multiple times, perfectly level it, fill in any high-low spots, all that. I didn't do that on any of this car, so it's not going to happen on the wing. And I can just show you what I got going on right now with the hood. Sorry if you hear the generator in the back. We lost power here because of the windstorm. But this is a very not perfect hood, okay? I know this has been block sanded twice. I actually did, because when you look at a vehicle, normally your eyes go whoosh, right down the hood. So I wanted to make sure this was good-ish enough. So I took the time and make sure I block sanded some of these body lines in. Kind of see I have a nice ridge all the way down that one. I had to do a little bit of repair at the nose of the hood. So this parts of this have been sanded to metal. This has had one coat of fillable spray primer on it, if you will. So this is going to get another coat of that. So we're going to spray this with that fillable primer again. We'll come back and then wet sand this with a block, and then I'm going to have to put a little glaze on some of these little imperfections yet. And then that'll be good enough. Then we will put our epoxy primer over that, seal it, and then we'll move on to paint and clear. So hood is just about done. We're not going to cover all that in the video because bodywork's boring and it sucks and I hate it. This front nose cone, if you guys don't know, for those who don't own a 91 or 92, if you own an 82 to 90, there's plenty of repop front bumper covers, rear bumper covers, but 91 to 92, no one really makes them. So you are left to either repair what you have or find someone selling something good enough to use, which is what this one is. I went all the way up to Minneapolis to pick this up last year. And this was painted at least 2 times that I can count. You can probably see some of that here. Plastic primer. And then if we go for primer, first coat, second coat of paint. But again, I already exposed way too much plastic on this probably. So we're gonna follow, maybe I'll do a separate video on this, being that this is plastic and significantly more tricky to do. I'll take you through the process and see what it turns out like, right? If I take you through the process and it turns out like shit, we're gonna find out together. But we'll get back on this wing here. I'm gonna set up, get a bucket of water, get my sandpaper, find my blocks, and do some of that kind of stuff. And I'll do a little bit of speed lapse, a little bit of real time, because like I said, sanding is boring. It's a lot of sand, clean, check, wet it down, sand clean, check some more. So we got a lot of work to do. Let's get going. All right, once again, change of plans. I know they make a bunch of fancy products out there. I'm literally using Duplicolor sandable primer, automotive, and it's black. And don't shake it too much. You don't want it to come out like you're painting. And I normally hold it, depends how you want to do it, but I kind of try to let the particles fall instead of like, right? So we're just gonna maybe 6 to 8 inches above, very, very light. You don't want this stuff to plug up your sandpaper for eternity. So that's what we got. That's gonna be my guide coat. You can see it's, well, yeah, there you go. Pretty light, it's what you want. Just enough to try to keep track of where you're sanding, okay? All right, I'm gonna go fill, I finally found a clean bucket. We're gonna go fill that up. Then we'll get to wet sanding. Okay, we're back with a bucket of water. Just a note about the water, and again, remember, not a body guy. Take everything I say with a block of salt, okay? But I have been told to use cold water because you're already creating some heat from the friction, and using cold water helps keep that to a minimum because you don't want to have anything happen really to the chemical bond between this coating and the actual fiberglass, or the metal and the primer, the paint and the clear coat, whatever you happen to be. So keeping everything nice and cool and clean, I've been told is key. So that is cold water. And I'm gonna clean this table up. I gotta find my sandpaper and what block I'm gonna use. And I'll show you all that when we come back. Okay, so here we go. There's what I'll call the right way to do this and the way I'm gonna do it. And like I said, we already know, like, beat that horse to death. We are not going from a SEMA car here. But it's good to be aware of the curvature of what you're working on, right? So I could take a regular block and run it through here, but this wing curves, it crests. This wing also curves front to back. And if you use a big, hard, stiff block, you will leave ridges. You just will. So really the right way to do this would be to go out and buy like a nice flexi block or something to handle the curves, right? They make different sizes, different types, all that. We're gonna do the cheap thing. And I promise when we're done, this will come out just fine for, again, 10-foot car. This is a 3M Pro 320. I like these, they last a long time and they clean well. And you also get sandpaper on the edge, which does work nice for getting into some crevices. Because remember, we do have to scuff every inch of this. So those corners and this will come in handy probably later on when we're underneath this wing. So with that, I'm going to set you guys up, do a little portion, we'll clean it in that, or wipe it down, and I'll kind of show you what we're going for. Let me back up quick. Okay, sandpaper. So I said 400 up front. I would say 320 is probably the most aggressive you'll want to go. And when you add water, you actually get a little more aggressive. So we're gonna be careful with this and go slow. If needed, I do have some 400 grit sandpaper we can wrap around this. And you can still use this in a flexible nature. Just wrap some sandpaper around it. It works really well. Another little trick. And then I didn't show this, but I did already clean this wing a couple days ago. Or maybe it was last night. But I'm a big fan of Sprayway. Contains alcohol. It's a really good cleaner for debris. So when we get into cleaning and spraying, you're always going to see me start with a Sprayway, get everything nice and clean, and then I'll move on to wax and grease remover. And that just helps ensure that we have a good, clean surface when it comes time to start spraying. Again, at this point, you'll always see me, except in there, you saw me with my hands on that, but that still hasn't been cleaned yet, so I'm not worried about that as much. But now that, like, this probably won't get as much body work, so this could very well go from sanding right into getting ready for paint prep. You're always going to see me now with gloves on. Probably one of the most important things you could do. Your skin has oils in it, other contaminants. You don't want that in your piece. So from this step forward, I would recommend gloves. You rip a glove, replace it, put new gloves on. You'll go through boxes of gloves. That's fine. Just make sure you account for that when you're doing your paint. If you're trying to keep a budget or anything like that, you'll probably go through $100 of gloves on a car like this. At least you will if you're me and you're clumsy and make a mess with paint. Okay, I'm gonna go grab the tripod, set you up over there, and we'll start seeing what this looks like. Get this bad boy opened up. The other thing I always like to do is I just like to submerge these and kind of swish them around in the water a little bit. That just helps get any dust that might be on the actual sanding surface off. You never really know. I would also just quickly go through and do an inspection. You don't want, like, maybe somehow a piece of gravel gets in, right? You buy these at hardware stores. You never know what could get mixed in with them. So just make sure you're dealing with a nice clean block when you do use one of these. And then direction wise, I'm probably going to try to go mostly front to back this way and just work that. Like that. Okay. And clean often, I guess that is the next key, right? Make sure you keep a clean sponge. What you don't want, and what I've had happen, is you have a bunch of buildup on here. You go to sand, all of a sudden that buildup becomes an abrasive, and now you're leaving lines. You're letting that other debris in your sanding block now leave marks on the piece. And a little counterintuitive when you're trying to smooth everything out. And this is gonna make a mess, so I know I'm gonna be a mess. It's just something that we gotta deal with here. But I'm gonna do a little bit more here, and I can already see we're making some progress on this. So I'll get some paper towel, get this cleaned up, and I'll bring you in for a closer look. Okay. Another thing that I use, you can find these at Walmart has them. I've seen them at Menards if you're in the Midwest, I think. But these are nice because they are lint-free, heavy duty. And while you catch this on a piece of metal, yeah, it's still going to leave some stuff behind potentially, but these work really nice for cleaning. Like right before you would say get like a sticky pad and take the final dust off. These lint-free ones are pretty decent to use. And for something like this, we can get quite a bit of use out of them. So, but yeah, I'm hoping the light's gonna be good enough for you guys to see this. Let me bring you in and try to get a look at this. So, okay, this is probably a pretty good angle. So you can see now we've sanded here. So you can see where we have sanded our coat off. So like right here, here. So you can see we're starting to work some of the roughness out of this piece by looking at where our guide coat is missing. So, and I'm not using a ton of pressure. We're just gonna basically use the weight of my hand and work this through. And when I get a big section done, I'll bring you in and kind of show you. I'm hoping this coating is thick enough where we can get a nice smooth surface the first go around without having to bring in the body filler. That would be nice. So again, all these pieces could be different, but here's what I'm seeing so far is that we are smoothing that out. You can kind of hear the difference. So we are smoothing it out and taking out a lot of the surface imperfections. These dark spots you're seeing here is not guide coat. That's actually, this primer is actually a lot thinner than I thought. So this is actually us getting in underneath it a little bit here, but I think we're good. As long as it's nice and smooth, because we're going to be using a epoxy primer as our sealer. So as long as it's smooth and we don't have bare fiberglass showing, which we don't, that epoxy primer will float right over all this. So we're not worried about that, but we aren't going to take it any further with the 320 on this. I will, I think, finish the rest of the wing with the 320 just to knock down the heavy stuff, and I'll show you here what you should be able to hear it. Like you'll hear it change as you sand, like smooth. Okay, getting into the rough stuff, right? Smooth, knocking down the rough. So you can use your ears, your eyes. You have a lot of sensors. It's just a matter of going slow. Don't do that and drop it on the ground, pick up a bunch of dust. Bad sanding block. And you're not pushing down. It's just literally the weight of my hand. That's all you need. You may be tempted to push, do it faster, but you're just going to create more headaches for yourself down the road, especially if you're doing like big body panels and using an actual sanding block. Again, not a body guy, but that's a pretty nice line. I did okay. So we'll put you back on speed laps. I got a lot of work to do. All right, so there's our finished product. I did go back. You saw me do the backside, but I just went over the top. That's, if I was going to make sure one surface was flat, again, being a 10-foot car, I just made sure, came back over the top of the wing with 400 pad, which is the yellow one here. And don't break that. All in all, it went pretty good. Just to point out, so you can see what I think here, and I don't know the manufacturing process, but we do have some red. So I'm gonna guess maybe the red is some of the original gel coat, then a primer, and then an epoxy sealer. I don't know, but I don't think it's gonna be a big deal. This is flat and smooth enough that, and I'll go over the products in a little bit better review here, but basically this stuff here, oh, that's our paint. I got to start getting this all organized again. Here it is. This is our epoxy primer that we're going to use, and we'll go over this. I think this is what we'll cut this video off. In the next video, we'll go over final paint prep and probably primer and sealing. And then in the third iteration, I think we'll go to paint, clear, and all that. So this is our epoxy primer that we're using as a sealer. This is Omni MP170, and it's catalyst activator. I should have enough of that left to do what we need to do. There's some other questions about the color I used in the engine bay. This is what I got just because it was cheap and automotive, and I guess it got pretty good reviews. This is, again, from Federated Auto Parts as well, their paint department. This is their classic hot rod satin black. This is a single stage, so it's paint, activator, and we'll actually end up having to mix a little bit of that up by hand to touch up the window channel. I've also decided I'm gonna probably go to Hawks and order the billet aluminum hinges. So this will all come off again, and I'm gonna wait to paint this because, well, if I shatter this, replacing those, then I didn't need to do that. So wait till we have the new hinges on before we touch up where those factory wing brackets went. So I think that's going to do it for this video. That's how I'm prepping this wing. I'll get this cleaned up in the next video and show you what I used to do that in those products. And then at some point I have all the ground effects to do. So a little bit tricky, right? So that's the doors, the fenders, rear quarters, and then these guys, which are repop, which I'm not a big fan of. They're cheap. There's only one company that makes them, no matter where you buy them from. Don't be fooled. These actually go up under the front here, and this round egg shape attaches to the underside of the front bumper cover. This side gets taped basically to that fender. But these are going to be a little harder to prep. One, they're plastic, a virgin plastic, I think. And this looks like some type of gel coat. So I'm going to have a whole prep process I have to do for these, but I'd like to get all that kind of stuff sprayed at one time. Oh, God. You get over the shit, rush up. Who put all this stuff here? Gosh, we're going to leave that in the video. That's kind of funny. So here's my theory, running theory, is I want the front bumper cover, those parts, painted at the same time. The wing doesn't matter because at this juncture, it kind of is what it is, but maybe I'll paint the wing and the rear bumper cover at the same time since they're on the same side of the car. This way, if I mix the paint up a little bit different or something's a little off, hopefully it helps trick someone's brain into not being able to see all those details. And then when I do the hood, I'm also going to paint these inserts. These look like they had been replaced at some point. So I'm going to try to find a way to get this metal grate off carefully, and we'll make sure we paint these white the same time we do the hood. So again, they're as similar of a color as possible, as far as making sure they just come from the same batch of paint. Now, white is very forgiving, much more so than, say, a darker color or a pearl or something like that. So I have a little bit of prep work to do before we're ready for that. But there's also been some questions before we hang up the phone here about my paint booth, if you can call it that. So I'll post this in the link. This was literally the cheapest shelter I could find on Amazon. And I know it's not a real paint booth, guys. I'm not an idiot, okay? I get it. However, I would have normally no problem just painting a car in an open shed if you can get everything cleaned up. My neighbor does it, and he builds SEMA quality cars. It can be done. For me, this was just maybe simpler as I knew I wasn't going to paint everything at once. And this just, at the very least, helps keep the overspray off of everything else in my shop. Is it perfect? Absolutely not. I still get crap landing in my paint. I can give you plenty of examples. But this did give a nice structure as well, where you can see I have some LED lighting up here. A lot of it's just hung from wire that I spanned from one side to another and tightened up with a turnbuckle. Some of the lights are just hung on the poles. And then I just ran some extension cords in the ceiling to be able to turn them all on. But this gives me a really nice, bright place to paint in if I turn on all the lights. Oh, sorry, I don't have the other ones plugged in. But if I turn on the top ones too, I almost get no shadows in here, which is nice, right? Pretty much that shadow goes away when the top lights are on. And then I just happen to have a service door on the back of this. So I took an 18-inch sauna tube maybe, cut a hole, reinforced it with some duct tape in my shelter here. And doesn't have really enough CFM to do a great job, but as you can tell, it still does provide a little airflow. Again, I think this would have worked a lot better if I had a higher CFM fan, keeping air circulating in here, but that is what it is. I think when you see me spray the clear, you'll see that it's not as hazy as one would think. So in that instance, it works pretty good. Now, before I paint in here, we can kind of go over this now. What I do is I'll actually drag the garden hose in here. I'll cover this up so it doesn't get wet, obviously. And I'll just spray down the walls just to get all the loose dust and everything off. And I'll do this like the morning of me painting. Same with the floor. And then I'll come in here and mop. I'll probably mop this floor 2 or 3 times. And I'll even drag the mop in here between coats. And that just helps keep the dust down. And then the other nice thing is between the wire I hung and all the steel tubes, it's an awesome place to hang parts off bungee cords or rope or whatever. And there's actually plenty of room in here. I was able to pull the Firebird in here all the way and have plenty of room around it to paint. And I'm just an amateur. That's the first time I've literally ever painted a car. And then, the roll-up door, I'll leave open. Or maybe I'll drop it halfway down just to help airflow through here. And Depending on the weather, I might crack the garage door or I'll open the service door. And again, that's just to help that be able to create a draft. So this is my makeshift paint booth again. I use that term loosely, but it's served me well so far. If you're wondering, this is just a cheapo, what do you call these? Remote power outlet. So I just have the lights on these, the fans on these. There's the fan. And then lights. So that's what I did. It was cheap. I think it was like 180 bucks a couple of years ago. This is probably more like 250 now with inflation, but so that is that. We'll continue on the parts in the other video, but for now, please stay tuned. I know this is kind of boring stuff, but hey, it's still part of the process. And some of these videos I wish I had when I started. So in the spirit of the channel, that's what we're kind of doing here. Until next time, my friends, thanks for watching Beyond the Manual. Please like and subscribe, share with your friends. It's much appreciated. I've gotten some awesome feedback and comments, and I really enjoy interacting with everyone. So until next time.